Well, hey, hi, hello, you all. It's so great to be visiting with you again. I hope you had a wonderful Labor Day weekend. I don't know how many of you were probably like me and you ended up doing a lot of work and last minute chores on Labor Day weekend instead of going out and having fun. And it's hunting season in Colorado, and I was busy putting up hay because you have to make hay when the sun is shining. And so that's how my weekend started, was baling hay. And actually, I usually rake. My husband bales. But that was a huge project, and we still have more to go, but we got our place done. So that is good. Managed to do it without getting rained on. But yeah, so we grow hay here. We have cattle to feed. We have horses to feed. We have a mini donkey to feed and all sorts of fun stuff like that. So that was kind of how my weekend went. I do have a bear tag here in Colorado, and so I will be getting out to go bear hunting. However, it just didn't happen this weekend because work comes first.
This summer, whether at the range or in the field, WSI Sports Hyper-Tech bamboo tanks, tees, and leggings will have you covered. Visit WSISports.com to support the show and use the affiliate code MACO10 for 10% off your purchase. All products are proudly made in the USA. WSI is bringing back pride in American-made clothing. Again, that code is MACO10 for 10% off your order at WSISports.com.
So this week, I wanted to talk to you all a little bit about hunting because I know some of you don't hunt yet, but you're kind of curious, and that's why you tune in. And thank you so much for listening. I do appreciate everybody who has reached out and those of you that haven't reached out. And by the way, before I dive deep into stuff, and actually we're not going to get too deep today. We're just going to kind of get started into reasons of why we hunt as well as ways to get started hunting. But before we get going, for those of you who have reached out to me, if you ever want me to answer your questions on the podcast, when you send an email or a message, if you'll let me know, that would be wonderful. I don't want to share your stories or questions or your information without your permission. However, I do kind of share them in a roundabout way through some of the content that I do produce. But if you want to message me, you can direct message me on most social media outlets. Just look for Mia Anstine. You can direct message me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads. Does Threads have direct messaging? I don't even know. But you can message me there, or you can email me. The email address is contact@miaanstine.com. And I would be happy to answer your questions. If you ever want it to be shared on the podcast, let me know in your message, or I may reply to you sometimes and ask as well. We've talked over the years about different hunts. We've shared some stories about hunting elk and mountain lions and all different stuff like that. But some people can be intimidated. And so I just wanted to kind of give you some ideas. So first of all, I generally recommend to hire it. If you don't have a mentor that's experienced, hire an outfitter. Go on a guided hunt. Let that outfitter know that you're learning and you want to learn as much as you can so that you can eventually become self-sufficient and independent in your hunting practices. On the website, on miaanstine.com, if you go to the shop tab, you will find there a workbook that you can download, and it guides you through the process of booking a guided hunt and helps you to get exactly what you want out of a hunt. So a lot of times when I've asked people about their hunts, and sometimes they're disappointed, sometimes they feel like they didn't get their money's worth or things weren't quite right. Sometimes that truly happens. Like, sometimes you go to a restaurant and you have this expectation and it's terrible. And same with a guided hunt. Sometimes that's just the way it goes. But that workbook will guide you through the process so that you have the best opportunity of having the best experience for your hard-earned money. So it'll walk you through all that process. While you're doing that, if you have questions about the workbook, again, you can message me. I'm here as a resource for you. So that's one thing that you can do, is go on a guided hunt. But before you do that, let's think about the reasons why we hunt. And one of those I've talked about numerous times, and I will put links in the show notes to the past episodes that I refer to in this episode. The North American model of wildlife management, conservation, is part of the reason why I hunt, is because we want healthy herds. We want sustainable wildlife populations. We live in the wildlife's habitat. And so therefore we are part of that management tool. So that's part of why we hunt. But we also hunt. Most people, the number one reason why they hunt is because they want to put food on the table. And I am all about that too. I haven't shared a lot about my health journey, but for the past 12 months, I'm going to have to share this on a future episode, and maybe I can get my functional medicine doctor to be on the show. I'll see if I could do that. But I've been on this journey to heal my body. And part of that is the food that we eat. Actually, a huge part of that is the food that we eat. And organic food just helps us live in a wonderful state of harmony with our bodies and the world around us. So healthy food is part of why we hunt. Also, something that I think is huge is connecting with nature. So hunting allows you to kind of sink into the outdoors. You look at the world totally different when you're on a hunt versus when you're on a hike, and you see things differently. And if you haven't hunted yet, I would love to know your thought after you've gone hunting and how you view those ecosystems and habitat and how you observe the wildlife while you're out there. I would love to hear your stories. I shared last winter a story about my friend that went on his first pheasant hunt. And we didn't talk a lot about the connections. For him, it was more anxiety of going on this group hunt. And so those are experiences that I would love to hear and share with other listeners. So if someone else is kind of concerned, maybe they can learn from what you have learned, and it saves some steps there. But something else, something that's a huge reason why I hunt, is the work reward process. And so the challenges that we face, the development of our skills, and that work we put in to maybe actually attaining our goal or maybe not. Even when I don't fill my tag, I have so many successful hunts because I push myself and I try to be better than I was last time, try to outsmart those animals on their own terrain. And sometimes you do it and sometimes it's a bust. But overcoming those challenges, it just feeds us, and it really helps us to become more self-confident, and it helps us to be resilient. It also leads to health and fitness. So how wonderful is that? I just talked about healthy living. And when you're out there hiking around, when you're overcoming the elements, it helps our innate nature, our primal instincts to come back, and we ground ourselves. So hunting is an absolute wonderful thing. So if you have other reasons, I would love to hear about them. Again, let me know. So let's talk about how we get started hunting. And I'm a volunteer. I'm a hunter education instructor. And if you're going to hunt, you need to take hunter education. And if you are certain states, if you're a certain age, you don't have to take hunter education. And in some states, you can go as a mentee. You can have a mentor take you and you can go under them. I still recommend, if you think you may want to hunt, or if you just want to learn more about hunting, take a hunter education class, because there's so much that's covered in the classes. We cover safety, obviously, hunter safety, hunter education. We cover ethics, laws. We cover hunting techniques. We cover a lot about wildlife management, habitat, conservation, survival. I mean, there's a lot in the class. So it's something that I highly recommend. Even if you're going on maybe a private land hunt where it's not required, go ahead and take hunter education. It's a great course. And if you've already been to hunter education, take a newbie and go with them, because you might learn something from the questions that are in the class. I am kind of mind blown month after month when I teach that some of the questions that people ask, I'm like, wow, no one ever asked that, and I learned something. So it's wonderful. Never stop learning. Something else, after you've got your hunter education, or if you go as a mentee with your mentor, or if you're on private land, make sure that you obtain whatever hunting licenses and habitat stamps, duck stamps, get all the licenses and permits that are required in your area. Research that by either asking your outfitter or guide, or you can get in touch with the Wildlife Conservation Agency, either the Game and Fish or the Department of Natural Resources. Go ahead and get in touch with them and find out what licenses and tags are required for whatever hunt you intend on embarking on. After that, and actually in conjunction with that, not after that, because you need to know what you're going to hunt, and then you have to get the hunting license for that. For example, if I want to hunt elk, I've got to maybe put in for a draw process to apply to hunt an elk. I don't just get to go hunt an elk. So we'll have to put in for a draw. The draw here in Colorado is the first Tuesday of April every year. That's the deadline. So we want to do it before that so that we're not caught and not getting in the draw. Right now in this state, we also have some tags or licenses, and those are kind of synonymous, a hunting license or a tag. The tag is the part that after you have shot your animal, you'll put that tag on that animal, and that where you put it is different in various states. Again, hunter education, they'll teach you. So we want to get our hunting license or a tag, and for an elk, you get one. You only get one, and then if you have certain areas where there are an abundance of wildlife, maybe you can apply and get another one, stuff like that. But we do have areas that are called OTC, or over the counter. And those areas, or hunting units, those are management areas. And you can get over the counter hunting licenses currently in some of those areas. So that's something to look in, and in your different state or wherever you intend to hunt, and see if they have that available. Right now in Colorado, we do have this available. However, we have a new game commission here in Colorado, and it is slated to be going to limited hunting licenses. And that is a management tactic, and it's also an anti-hunting tactic. So the less they have us hunting, then they'll just have the wolves managing the wildlife. That's what they think. And that's a whole different episode. You can listen to some of the past episodes where we talk a little bit about wildlife management and learn more about it. But currently, over-the-counter hunting licenses, so you still have time. If you want to hunt in October or November in Colorado, you can get an over-the-counter hunting license. So find that out. Right now, it is waterfowl season, so you can hunt geese right now. With geese, you do have to get a waterfowl stamp. We have a state stamp as well as the federal stamp that's required. So check that out. You also have to get a Habitat Improvement Program number, or HIP number. And so you want to get that before you go hunting as well. These are all different things that you have to look for. Okay. So make sure that you do that. Again, if you have questions, reach out, just direct message me or email me. After you've decided what you're going to hunt, and again, maybe all of these can be in correlation, in conjunction, you're going to need some hunting gear. I have a lot of people ask, what should I first get for hunting gear? I don't have a lot of money. And if you don't have a lot of money, you might not be able to hire a guide, but check with the guides, because they may be able to work with you. They may be able to do some financing. They might be able to kind of downgrade and give you just the bare necessities of whatever you need. They also may have loaner gear. If you go on, say, the Wyoming women's antelope hunt, I've had them in a past episode. Again, I'll link that in the show notes. But they have loaner gear for new hunters. So that's something that you can look into. You're going to need to get your gear. You might need to get your rifle or shotgun or your bow. You're going to need some ammunition or arrows for that. And in past episodes, I've also talked about some hunting rifles. I'll talk to you more about rifles and management of your recoil and stuff like that in a future episode. So stay tuned. Hopefully, if you're not already subscribed, you will now. But after that, you want camouflage clothing. And something that I suggest for people who don't have a ton of money is you may be able to go to one of those big box stores and get something inexpensive. However, what I caution you there is that stuff that's inexpensive usually doesn't last too long. So it's a trade-off. If you're only going to hunt once or, not too often, then maybe it's going to last you a little longer. However, for me, when I'm hunting season after season after season, it's not cost effective to buy that cheap gear. It's better to buy something that's high quality. So think about that when you're looking for gear. One thing that I usually recommend is find rain gear that is not too noisy. So some of it sounds pretty plasticky. It's stiff and it's noisy when you're hiking. Look for something that's not too loud, but if you have rain gear, you can put that over most anything, especially if you're going to be hunting in the winter. You can layer that over your winter snow pants and stuff like that and still be camouflaged. So that's something to consider. But when you're out hunting, you always want layers. So we want a base layer, especially in Colorado, because it can be really chilly in the morning and then in the afternoon it's super hot. And I mentioned Wyoming. When I hunted there, holy smokes, it was 20 degrees in the morning and then I think 80 during the day when we were hiking around. And you can get really sweated up. Our advertisement for WSI clothing, they have great base layers that you can wear in the winter to keep you warm that are not too bulky, but they react with your body to help heat you up. And that way you can stay somewhat warm. And then if you get warmed up later, the temperatures are too hot and you get sweaty, they wick away the moisture. And so you dry out a little more fast than if you had, say, cotton, like my Cotton Mac Outdoors shirt that I'm wearing today. That moisture will wick away more quickly than cotton clothing. So that's something to look for, is look for maybe also Vormi. Vormi has great, it's a wool blend that also, the wool blend, you can get wet in the rain and it'll still keep you warm. So those are some qualities to look for. Look for like a semi-synthetic blend, a polypropylene blend, or wool blend clothing, and those will help keep you warm. Then put your camo layers over the top of that. You need to kind of look at the forecast in the area where you're going to hunt and make sure that you're aware of that before you start going. I do have some shorts on my YouTube and I think on the Reels and TikToks that talk about ways to keep your fingers warm. And so you can check those out. Something else, I recently have been sharing some links to articles at Swarovski Optic where I wrote about horseback hunting, and I also shared a great recipe for pastrami over there, and they shared that as, what do they call it? It wasn't venison, but it was an elk pastrami recipe, but since it's published in Europe, they used another word. You'll have to find it on my social media because either way, it's great elk pastrami or deer pastrami recipe. It is wonderful. But that was a little tangent, and let's come back to what I was going to. Binoculars. You need optics. You need a good scope. You can have a decent rifle, but you need a good scope. And something with a good scope is figure out how the crosshairs work on there. Make sure that you have enough optical zoom on there so you can see your target and so forth. If it were me, I would spend more on my optic than I would on the rifle if I was on a budget. So that's just something to consider. Another thing you can do if you're on a budget, you can go to pawn shops. It's similar to a gun store. You still have to pass your background check and requirements with the federal firearms licensing, but you can go and you can buy a used rifle there, and some of those already have nice optics on them. So that's a way to kind of get something that's already set up and maybe already used, but you might be able to get a good deal that way. And in addition to your optics, you're going to need maybe a backpack with your survival gear. You might want a first aid kit in there. You might want some matches, fire starting tools, your knives. I actually have a whole gear list. I have a big game hunting gear list and a turkey hunting gear list on my website. You can find those on the sidebar, and you can also find them on the Learn tab up there. So check that out. You can get those gear lists. That'll give you a whole list of things that you're going to want to take on your hunt. As I said, make sure you check the weather before you go and then get that gear that's going to be suitable. I mean, you don't want your lightweight tennis shoe hikers if you're hunting in November in Colorado. Whereas right now in Colorado, I may wear my lightweight tennis shoe hikers. So that's just something to consider. Good shoes are a must, and make sure that they're broke in before you go, because if you just buy them before you go and you get blisters, that is the worst, and it will ruin a season in a heartbeat. So make sure they're broken before you go. So that's a whole list of things that you need to know before you go. But something else I wanted to remind you is that hunting comes with a lot of responsibilities, and a big one is being ethical. Make sure that you are an ethical hunter. Make sure you obey the laws. Make sure that you display an image of knowledge and respect, and that you care about the wildlife and the environment around you. And above all and everything, please be safe and make sure that you get out there and you have fun and that you have a rewarding time in the outdoors, regardless of whether you fill that tag or not. Until next time, I will see you then. Have a great one. Bye.
Hey, this is Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, host of the Armed Lutheran Radio podcast, reminding you that the podcast you're listening to is a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Check out all the great content at selfdefenseradio.net.